Welcome to the Openhearted Podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Openhearted Podcast. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, joined with my main man, Photon John. What's going on, brother?
Just feeling the weekend a little, but doing all right.
Feeling the weekend a little bit. Why is that? What the hell? What went on that you're feeling it still on a Monday afternoon?
A few beers, but no, it was good. Saw some people.
Special occasion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about yourself? What did you get up to on the weekend?
So my wife and I, we just went on a boat harbour cruise around Sydney Harbour. So my mum had brought my wife a boat harbour cruise for her birthday a fair while ago, right? Yeah. And it's just been so miserable, rainy, all that type of stuff. So we're like, let's get this sorted. Ended up getting it sorted and did it. So and it was a beautiful day too.
Yeah.
So it all worked out in the end. So it was good just to get out, do a few things. I think it's been great to do a few things when, especially. This time last year was so, you couldn't do anything. So now we're able to get out there and do a few things. I was really stoked. But anyway, enough about that. I tell you what, we've got something really cool that we're going over today. I think the big thing that you and I spoke about, Kev, was that, we've had some awesome guests on who have really shone the light on some really great topics. And it's sort of like, okay, well, we were sort of like, well, let's get back to basics and let's just bring it back to you and myself and just have a little bit of a chat, have a little bit of a chat about maybe some of the stuff that we've done in the past and all that type of stuff. So I suppose the biggest thing today, what we're going to talk about is transitioning into adulthood as a neurodistinct person. I think, that is huge. Going from, a teenager into adulthood, that was big. Well, what's some of your thoughts, about that topic that we're going to be going over today, Kev?
I think that it was learning that it was, although it was very slow going for me, sort of maturing and figuring stuff out that other people sort of seem to easily figure it out. It was okay that it took a while. Learning that there was a reason, and to give myself a little bit of credit for how far I have come, considering some of the challenges that I've faced.
Hey, can I say, man, is there someone grinding something out your window? All good.
I've been talking about.
All good, man. All good. I suppose that's why we're live. We're picking up all the stuff around us, but that's cool. So yeah, look, I think it's a huge topic. I hope we can really talk about some cool stuff today. If there is anyone listening, please ask us questions, share some of your stuff. We'll post it up on the podcast here. But before anything, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe, follow all of our social media pages. You can see it up in the top right-hand corner there, or the right-hand corner to me. I suppose that's the same to everyone. And yeah, it would really help. Okay, so look, I think the first thing that I think, we've really got to start from the beginning here, and childhood and teenage challenges we had to get past. Now, Kev, what was some of those for you, my man?
I think I just didn't realize how parallel my world was, how parallel my brain was, and I really fully didn't understand what was going on with me, and that I was just seeing everything through a completely different lens to all my friends.
Sorry, man. Can I say, do you have like a window that you can shut?
No, it's like directly below my feet.
Oh, serious? It's coming up through the floorboards. Okay, all good. We'll keep on going. Keep going, man.
It took a long time for me to realize that I was even seeing anything differently. I just thought that I wasn't doing things well, I guess. And that was a real struggle because I just the whole world around me didn't make sense, and people were sort of coming at me being like, what's the deal? Why are you behaving in that way? Why are you doing that? Why don't you understand this? And it was just really, really confusing that I didn't understand how weird I was,
Yeah, look, the thing with and I think it's I don't know if it's the same with you, but I tend to look back in I sometimes reminisce in the past type of thing and think about things from back in those days and all of those types of things. And I think some of the challenges back then were, it was, and I think a big thing about it as well was that when I think back to primary school, high school, all that, transitioning into a teenager, all of that, failing school, getting really bad marks. It was just like that I felt really on my own a lot of the time. We hear a lot of people, especially in the neurodiversity community, speaking about loneliness and people not understanding what we're going through. And I can relate to that on so many levels because, and I think it's a little bit different now, and for me anyway, because I know that a lot of people who I know are going through similar type of things, but back then, you feel like you're the only person who is going through that struggle. And it's really hard to communicate that to people. You've got people that you would call friends, mocking you, mocking certain things, making you feel like crap, I think that was the thing that now I sort of reminisce and look back on, is that a lot of the people I hung out with back in school, I think about them, I think, you guys weren't my friends. You guys used to mock me. You'd put me down. You'd make me feel like crap. And I think that's where, school can play such a huge role in affecting people's mental health, all of that, in regards to, bullying or even things that people say to you. So, it can be a challenging time there. And I think as well that, and it was funny. I was actually at at this networking event on, what day was it? I think it must have been Thursday night. And I was speaking to people and I was saying, who are the biggest bullies in school? And it's not necessarily just other students. It's sometimes the teachers. Some of those teachers, would just make you feel like crap. That you didn't have any strength or motivation to want to get up and succeed. So, when you're going to transition from, say, high school into adulthood, before you've even hit that, you're already being bruised and battered and, told you will never be anything. How are you setting someone up for success for later in life, if that makes sense?
Yeah, exactly. And that was unfortunate. I mean, I ended up with a couple of groups of friends really where they would cotton on that it was easy to bully me and I wouldn't even notice. So they could do it to my face, and I thought these people were my friends. And then it would get pretty bad, and I'd sort of start to cotton on that something was wrong, but I couldn't figure it out. And no matter how obvious it seemed to everyone else, and they'd really push it. Sometimes looking back now, I can see how obvious it is, but they were really making fun of me straight to my face, and I was just sort of, it was just going completely over my head. And they were for amusement. You know?
Yeah. See, the one thing that really stood out to me, so I suppose towards the end of high school, I got really involved with a lot of people who could score me drugs. I was 18, so I could get alcohol, all that. So, I was the go-to guy at school to be able to score for people, and the annoying thing about it was, and at the time you think, oh, Kevin's calling me. He must want to hang out. But Kevin was only calling me because he wanted to score. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until after I'd finished school and maybe I wasn't, maybe they had found other people to score through or whatever, that was when I wouldn't hear from those people anymore. And it made it like, oh, so those people are only using me because I could, get them something that they needed. And, I think that really was hard to sort of, take on board and sort of work through that at the same time as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And with me, I was just lucky. It was really music that saved that for me. It made me able to have friends, even then it was difficult, but at least I had that. Otherwise, I don't know, what would happen to me, really.
Totally. Hey, just if there are people listening, please, if some of this sounds familiar, please write through. We'd love to hear from you. We got my main man, Martin Griffin. I know Martin pretty well. We've been following each other on social media for quite a while now. So Martin's actually wrote, totally agreed. Back in the 80s, I did not have internet friends, community, but I have a few real true friends who were similar to me. And you know what? It's so funny that a lot of the people I see who were neurodistinct back in school, I wasn't necessarily friends with a lot of those people back then. But now I'm actually more friends with them than what I was back in those days. So it's been really funny to see how it sort of has sort of, I don't know, turned around and changed a little bit there. But yeah, it has. It's been so interesting just to see how all that developed. So what we should probably look at, and I suppose the biggest thing when we spoke about doing this today was going through those different stages that we went through. So, we had a lot of challenges. We were probably didn't know the right people to hang out with because it was very difficult to pick up on, hey, these people are these people being nice to us or are they mocking us? You know what I mean? So it was really hard to pick that. Or it was very hard to pick. What I found was it was very difficult to pick out the people who were a bad influence. Sometimes the bad eggs would always stick to each other, but there was sometimes people in there who had bad influences, which I found that was what led me down that garden path into destruction and all that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the escape, obviously, but just being a bit of a sensory addict, I guess. There was that as well, and trying to have friends. Obviously, these people were not my friends, but yeah, I did really retreat into that other world of partying and drugs. Unfortunately, just out of just not knowing what else to do. I was just so stressed out about trying to figure out the world and why I was so bad at certain things. And, that seemed like, I guess, like a solution at the time.
Totally. But like it's so true. And it's so easy to take that route. Now, before we go on, and I don't know what it is. It just seems that like sometimes, depending on the site, it doesn't show the actual person who is on Facebook. So we've got a Facebook user. I'm not sure who this is, and I apologize if it's a really good friend of mine. I was on the opposite side. I lacked any friends, and I was more isolated, regarded as the teacher's pet because I couldn't get along with people in my own demographic. Yeah, no, well, that's interesting. That's interesting because, and talking about how I'm now friends with a lot of people from back in school who I wasn't friends with. It's a lot of those people. Oh, Daryl. Hey, Daryl. Yeah. I know Daryl. It's a lot of those people are my friends now. And it's so funny because a lot of people saw a lot of people like that as, weird or whatever like that. But now I see them as just good people because they're just normal to me. Hey. But yeah, but this was the thing. I think that for me, for example, I was starting to mix with the wrong crowd. I was 18 before I finished school. So if we've got anyone who's from overseas listening, here in Australia, we're allowed to start drinking and partying and all that. Well, you can party at any age, really, but properly, legally drinking at age 18. So that was probably a bit of a problem within itself. So, I started hanging out with people, had my own car, all of those types of things. So, school, when I should have been at home studying, partying and having fun was what I enjoyed. It was almost my identity. What was that like for you, Kev?
Yeah, I guess the music that I was into didn't help that it was, seeped in drug use.
Yeah, totally.
Grunge era was a pretty seedy era for that stuff. But yeah, I also, sort of mistakenly thought that it helped me creatively, and maybe it puts you in a different mindset, but it's not. You can write perfectly great music without it. So I was sort of steeped in it in like a romantic sense. I thought I was living this romantic musician lifestyle.
But I remember like going to like band practice, right? And band practice so we'd practice like Saturday afternoon, and it was almost like we'd do band practice, we'd smoke weed, maybe have some drinks. It was like you said, it was like a ritual. And it was like, if we didn't do that, it felt like we couldn't like, jam or, stuff around and do all that type of stuff. So it was almost like it was a culture within itself. And then it was like, we then got to go to a party, and then, it's like, what party's on tonight, And, I think for myself was when I would go to parties, I was able to, I used to be a party animal. When I get drunk and all that, it felt like I was the life of the party. So, you would get you'd get attention, you would get attention by the right people. So, you were it was very attractive and really exciting, if that makes sense. And thinking about like ADHD, looking for like dopamine hits and all that, you can see how it plays hand in hand.
Yeah, from the autism's perspective, it was kind of like the same but different. So I could talk to people when I was messed up, because I was messed up. But I was still autistic and being strange, and I was really terrified of parties. I remember just going to them and feeling this terror inside, and then I would find it hard to make conversation and stuff. But it put me in a room with people.
Yeah.
That was it, and I didn't feel quite so alone, I guess.
Interesting. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting time, but I think the thing for me was that, especially leaving school, and then at schools you're going to parties, all that.
Yeah.
What I realized was a lot of people, moved on from that, went into university and really focused on career, where for me, I felt like I was stuck in that.
Yeah.
I was like, I need to find something to do or whatever. And I remember for years, this was going like 10 years straight, for example, of just spending hours, if not days, just sitting on couches stoned out of my head, or then drinking or taking whatever and all of that, and I think one of the biggest things was I think it was more sort of like, because I had been told in school I wasn't going to be able to achieve anything if I didn't get a good mark or do all these things. I was sort of like, okay, well, you're never going to be anything. This is going to be you for the rest of your life, type of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because it was the same. I just felt lost. I had no idea what was going on with my brain, and I just felt like that was my lot in life, which I guess leads pretty well into that whole time wasted thing, because I did lose years. But I think also not just to partying and whatnot. I think figuring stuff out. It really did take me a lot longer than everyone else that I knew to figure life out and people out and all that kind of stuff.
And I think other people have gone through the same. Daryl's also messaged here again. Bam, yes, I know the feeling. Put in a room with people and didn't feel so alone. Yeah, totally. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, it feels like it's sort of hard to figure out. You know what I mean? Like, I think to myself, because parents come to me sometimes or speaks to me and say, how can I help my son or daughter, or my daughter's this and that, or whatever it is, right? And I think the hardest thing is when a child, and this is just my opinion, I'm not a doctor in like teens and all that, but sometimes teens you can't control, especially when they're getting into 18, getting even 17 or whatever. Once they're getting older, they're really becoming adults, and you've really got to let them live their own lives.
Yeah, they're figuring themselves out, and I mean, I wouldn't say people ever really finish figuring themselves out. I'd say it tends to be my experience from conversations with friends that your 30s is kind of when you start to get yourself together. But it's a tough one with teen, because I know I was terrible at making decisions as a teen, but I needed to go through that process, to figure life and myself out a bit. And in our case, a little more than the average person.
And you know what? The thing that I realized, and this was sort of when time was wasted, I really was like, shit, what am I doing? You start to see things around you change. So so for example, if you're stuck in the partying scene, the drug scene, all that, everything else keeps like evolving and going around, where you're still the same. You're still trying to chase something, still trying to find the next party, all of these types of things. And then what happens is, this is what I've found, was that you start getting left behind. You see people progressing in their jobs. And, I felt that I was like, oh my God, I'm still at the same, and I suppose the biggest thing for me was, someone pointed that out to me. It was sort of like blunt. What would you say? What would you call that? Got to be cruel to be kind type of thing.
Yeah.
And hey, you might want to turn that light on now, man. It looks like it's getting pretty dark. I can only just see your face. But yeah, it was starting to get, everything else was changing, but I was still the same. And it was definitely, that was what really made me go, wow, let's think, I was like, okay, maybe I do need to make a change here. So I suppose, like, when you start looking at yourself and all that type of stuff, that's where you can really, and I think this goes into the next part perfectly, man. Developing that maturity, and what does that mean to you?
For me, it came when I just got tired of being in that place. I was just like, something's got to change. Something has to go well, and I sort of stopped. I stopped saying to myself, "Why is this stuff in life happening to me?" And started to take the horns a little bit. But that took some real struggle, with work in particular for years and years and years, because I didn't understand that I was getting social burnout. And that's why I was like losing interest in every job and leaving every job and rage quitting, all this kind of stuff, and getting fired from jobs. I had to. I learned that not everything in life can be enjoyable, but it's necessary, and your life overall can be more enjoyable if you just do the thing that you need. Work is important. I don't know if we've covered on here before, but I did spend some time homeless around 2002, and that really taught me the importance of a shower. No one appreciates that like I do. And work and just putting in the effort, man, even on the days where you don't feel like it. You got to look at your life as a whole, and not one situation after another. You know what I mean?
And I think the thing is that, with yourself, for example, a lot of people don't realize how easy it can be to end up on the street, or end up couch surfing. I've got students in a lot of my classes that talk about how they've been struggling to find a house. They finally found a house. And even my partner and I were talking about this the other day, right? So say, for example, having your license can, be a really, and I know you don't have your license, Kev, but this isn't, you're sorted because, what you do works well. You don't need a license. But, I was only speaking about this the other day, where a lot of the industrial estates are, right? Around Australia, they're usually far out from the city. There's usually limited public transport going out to those places. So if you're going to work there, you really need to have your license. Now, we hear a lot about a lot of neurodistinct people who may have failed school. So a lot of the time, a lot of neurodistinct people go into those jobs, into warehouses or whatever that is, right? So I think to myself, if you're someone who is struggling, maybe, like you said, was on the street, how the hell are you supposed to get a license? Because this day and age, you have to get up, like here in Australia, you have to get up a certain amount of points. And then I think you even have to pay to go through a proper driving school as part of that license to get your actual license. And if you don't have that license, a lot of the time you don't get that job because you can't get there because the public transport's crap. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Oh man, I am intimately familiar with the public transport system. It can go the other way too, because I struggled with the license side of things for a variety of reasons. It's things to do with sensory processing, delayed decision making, being able to read other drivers. But I'm actually working through all that stuff now. I'm thinking about trying to go for it at 40.
Cool.
But no, it really is a lifesaver, a lifeline that I just didn't have. So you're totally right.
And I think that's what I meant by, like, it is so easy for some people to end up on the street, especially if you don't have parents and that you can go to, or family that you can go to, if that makes sense.
I did have family that I could call, but I was young and stupid. I was learning a valuable lesson at the time.
Yeah, that's it. So, obviously developing maturity, I think that was a little bit later for myself and for a lot of other neurodistinct people that I've met. I think that's been a real big thing as well. It definitely came a lot later to me. And I think the thing was like being able to identify that as well was a really hard part. I honestly think to myself sometimes I'm like, there is like with the stuff I do in regards to the Neurodiversity Academy and all that, if I was to be doing that at age 21, man, there's no hope in hell. No, if I had gone to like a networking event and there was free booze, I would have been like, I would have been like, man, get this dude out of here. Do you know what I mean? Because you can't act like that at those types of events. Don't get me wrong. I've been to some of those events and been, really out of it, but I can control myself now, not have blackouts like I did back in the day and that. So, I think one of the biggest things is that the thing that taught me, thing that I learned probably the most was definitely changing that environment. For me, changing the environment and knowing how to change that environment was probably the biggest thing for me. You know what? Like I always say this, right? Like I remember when I first got into business and I got invited to, I can't remember what it was. It was this thing and they had all these big entrepreneurs up there talking and all that type of stuff. And I remember, I forget the name of the entrepreneurs, but they're all like big entrepreneurs that you would know, right? And they're all like, look, if you want to like party and run a business, this isn't for you, man. If you want to hang around people who want to party and you want to run a business, this isn't the game for you, And I'm like, well, I really, it was almost like a wake up call to be like, I do want to do this. I want to be successful at this. I want to be the best at what I can be. I need to take every step possible to make this happen. Now, I'm still working towards that, and business is bloody hard. And anyone who says that business is easy is a liar, or they're not doing it well enough, right? But the thing is, right, that I remember that afternoon, I went back to the house that I was like living at, and the people I was living with were having a big party. I remember getting home there and people were smoking crack pipes and doing like what is it? Like the soda bowl like bomb. You know how you can take in soda? What's that?
Yeah, Bobbies.
Yeah. That were like everywhere. They were like, it was like they were ammunition. It was like it was a war zone with ammunition bullets all over the ground, but they were like bulbs, man. And it was just like, what the hell is this? What the hell? I've just been to something that has just changed my life, and I'm coming here to this crap, And for me, it was like, that was the calling card. That was to go, all right, pack your stuff up, get the hell out. So next week, I moved out of there and I never looked back. Don't get me wrong, I'm still working towards what I'm working towards, but it was amazing to see things change. But I think for such a long time, it was so hard to see that, because, and don't get me wrong, a lot of people I used to hang out with were awesome people. They still are lovely people. But, when you really are easily influenced or whatever that is, changing that environment and changing it so you're around people who actually respect you for you, that plays a big role. So, for example, if you and I were to be hanging out tomorrow and I was like, hanging crap on you or something like that, and then you never called me again, yeah, of course I would expect you to do that, because you shouldn't have to put up with that. So this is where it's about finding a tribe, finding who fits in with you, and really embracing that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, same with me. My real changing point was moving into the city, because I was living out, let's say, lower socioeconomic area. And I just didn't. But that's kind of, I guess, to backtrack a little, that's kind of how I ended up homeless, because I had that moment when I was living in that place, and just sort of looked around, and all my friends were, on drugs or getting married way too young, or dead, or in jail. I'm just like, is this my life? Like, I don't think I want this to be my life. So I just jumped on a bus to Melbourne. Probably it was like one of the best and worst things I ever did. But yeah, didn't know anyone down there, and ended up homeless within a couple of weeks or whatever. But like I said, I could have called my family at any point, but I just felt like I needed something. I needed a kick in the ass. I needed something to learn something. And that was really the turning point. And then when I got back, I sort of got some jobs and stayed at those jobs, and moved into the city, and then started to build the life that I actually wanted.
But you know what? For me, I think the biggest thing for me was packing up, moving over to the UK, and not knowing anyone there. And I think the biggest thing when I moved to the UK, it was like I was in a lull period. I felt down. I felt I just didn't feel like I had the confidence in myself to do anything, right? And going there, I was and the biggest thing that I realized when I was over there, I started mixing with people, right? Making connections. And then within the hostel I was living at, I was the guy everyone came to score drugs.
Yeah, right.
And it was sort of like, wow, why is everyone coming to me? It's like I'm back overseas. It's like I'm back home when everyone would come to score. And it's like, oh my God, I'm attracting that type of people, And I remember sitting there for sometimes it would be days just watching TV in my hostel, and I'd be thinking, what are you going to do when you get home? You came here to change yourself. And look, I did change, and I actually learned a lot, because I did learn that I was like, man, I'm attracting the wrong people here. So it was sort of like, okay, I moved back home and I started to get my life on track. And it was amazing to see how quickly I grew and developed. But still, the people, I was still hanging around with my old environment, because I don't know if you've ever found this, but when you try to change your environment, for example, your friends who you used to hang out with, when you move away from that, you now have no friends, because you've got to find new ones, right? And it sort of can become very lonely. So what you end up doing is going back to them, because you're like, man, it's just so hard to meet new people, especially as you get older. It's really difficult to meet new people. So you keep going back and then going, oh, these guys are dickheads. Why am I hanging out with them? Then you try, go back, forwards. And for years I was doing that. My career was slowly starting to really progress, and people would go, how the hell are you doing so well in your career when you are because I was a nutter back in those days. I was wild. And it was like, and I'd sort of laugh about it. But then I thought to myself, hang on, how good could I be doing if I really started to apply myself and change that environment there? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've sort of had a slightly different path, in that I've had to change the environment while staying in it, or change my reaction to the environment, because being in a band still doing music, I'm in pubs a lot, and
hell yeah.
So I've had to really figure out how to actually, you know what? I haven't even had to figure it out. It's the same sort of thing with how I started to develop maturity a bit. I just got really tired of like being in that place and being that person. And I was like, I kind of had to learn to balance these things. And I mean, there were points in my 20s where it was like a bottle of whiskey a night after work. Great.
Yeah, I was the same with beers and all that.
Yeah. So I probably will settle down even more with age, but I've managed to really take things forward from where they were back then. We're sitting talking about all this while we're cracking beers.
Well, you're cracking beers, mate. I'm only drinking a Mount Franklin sparkling water with a hint of passion fruit in it. So I'm really starting to show my age. If people want to think I'm sitting here drinking beer, think it, because it's the total opposite. Hey, the total opposite. But I think that really blends in well to the next part, and learning that worth, I should say. What did that mean to you, Kev?
I didn't realize how much I thought that I didn't deserve good things, and how much that was sabotaging me subconsciously. I wasn't trying for things because I didn't feel like I deserved them, because I was just so weird and different and couldn't figure myself out, and no one else could figure me out, and it was just sort of putting me into this circular motion in life. But once I sort of understood that there's something not wrong with me, but that there's a reason why I am the way that I am, and learned how to do me, the way that I really do work, and learn about my brain. That self-worth slowly sort of started to come to the front, and I realized it was okay to want good things for myself, and not just naturally made me work harder. How about you?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing was, I remember I started winning big awards, like industry awards and all that type of stuff. And you'd have to get up and make speeches in front of industry experts in the industry I was working in. And I remember I was able to just walk on stage and boom, I'd have the crowd eating out of my hands type of thing. And I was like, this is a really great skill to be able to have, to be able to influence people and really help people to be able to see that you can do some great things if you put your mind to it. So I think that was a big thing. But I think the biggest thing for me was I started to assess what was going on around me. So I would probably look at other people. So that when I say other people, that may have been some of my supervisors or managers or owners of companies and stuff like that. And I would look at how they would do stuff. And I'd sometimes be, and I probably sound like I'm a bit up myself here, but I would sometimes look at them and think, man, the way you do things is completely backwards. How are you building the business that you're building with what you do? This is just my opinion, but there are so many dodgy business people out there that do shonky things. And then they'll talk to their team about how good they're doing and how we're a team and all that. And I think, what a load of crap. You don't even respect your clients, and you expect us to respect you back. And, looking at people like that, I often used to think, man, this is the way I look at it, right? And this is the way I'm building Neurodiversity Academy, is that I want to do things right. Yes, I need to make money. I need to make bucket loads of money. And that's not so I can drive around in a Ferrari or have a nice yacht on the harbor. That means that's so I can use that money to put more into neurodiversity and build this bigger and better than what it ever has been. So for me, I'm more about doing things right, because if you do things right, the money the money and all the, and when I say money, it's not, I don't think of it like being rich. I see it as being able to build it into something bigger and better. That's what that means to me, right? So, it's about doing things right. So doing the right thing And then even when you're leading your team's going to see that as well. And they're really going to maybe be inspired by that to be able to influence other people and all that type of thing. So, that's the way I looked at it. And I think that was what I used to look at. I used to be like, there's so many dodgy, and I still see it now, like the big thing with like my company, Neurodiversity Academy, is that, we could start doing what we really want to work towards. And we want to really disrupt education and help people get qualifications and all that. But what we have to do first is help organizations, like I'm talking corporate world here, to build, pardon me, neuro-inclusive workplaces. Because if we're going to help people get qualifications and then here's jobs at these places here, and they're not inclusive of that person, we're setting them up for failure, and we're back at square one, So sometimes it's just like there's such a big picture to work towards. But I suppose I'm going off track here, but this is where my self-worth is huge. If I can't see myself or act in the way that I need to act to build what my vision looks like, how can I be that person if I'm not? And I think that's what really helped me to be able to build and develop into the person I am today and who I will be in the future.
I think that also ties into the whole thing when it comes to learning self-worth. Find out, you probably, anyone out there listening probably has a good idea of what they are good at because they are neurodiverse. Because it was very much the same with me. I saw what people were doing in my industry. I was like, I'm pretty sure I could do that better. And then went out and built, over the last 8 years, a nice business around it. And haven't had a boss for 8 years and get to do everything the way I know it needs to be done, that I enjoy doing it. And so I think, you can sort of learn your self-worth by leaning more into your neurodiversity sometimes than just accepting that you have worth, if you know what I mean.
Definitely. Any other questions from anyone out there? Someone's about to share something, I think. Martin, here we go. Having self-worth is so important with fix-it mentalities. So yes, definitely. I think if we don't see that in ourselves, and I think the thing is, that's what I was lacking coming from school, being told you will never be able to succeed in school and all that. You won't succeed in life if you fail in school. How am I supposed to have self-worth? Do you know what I mean? So this is where, those early stages in school, if a kid is, struggling, by telling them, hey, look, if you don't do well in school, you'll never be anything in life, to try and put the scare factor into them, you're doing the exact opposite, But we gotta be in moderation, of course. I'm not saying if a kid's struggling in school to tell them, hey, look, don't even try. I think we still need to try. But in my case, I used to try and it got even worse, To tell you the truth, I speak to my mum about this all the time, and I say, if I had have had a chance to go back to school, I would have told my mum to pull me out of the school I was in, because they just had no idea of how to best support me and really try and find that school that, was would really help me to thrive. Plus also maybe put me around my own tribe as well, so that would be interesting there. Now, hang on, we've got another one here. I'm assuming this is from Daryl, maybe. Self-worth for me is how I dress, how I eat, and prepare myself initially in the day. I need to make myself feel like $1 million. that overflows into my work. Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big thing as well. I think, I think being yourself is so important. Like, if people look at pictures from me from at least 2 years ago or a year ago, short hair, tie, all of that. I've now grown my hair out. I've got a beard, all that. But I feel like I'm more myself. And I feel like I'm succeeding a little bit more because I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. And I think, and that's what it's all about, being who you are rather than being someone that you're not, So, yeah, definitely. And you know what? I think the big thing now is that you don't have to wear a tie or be like other people this day and age. You can dress however you want and still make $1 million. You know what I mean? So what if it makes you feel like $1 million?
Yeah, I mean, I sit in boardrooms with directors and stuff, and I really don't change how I dress at all.
Yeah.
They're just like, well, A, they immediately remember me, and B, they can see that I'm being genuine with them. And then I start talking, and they realize that I know what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah, totally. And I think we're starting to see things change there. We're starting to see that change a fair bit. But recommendations for parents with neurodiverse kids. What does that mean to you, my man?
Things may take a little longer, and they may take a different path. Well, they may necessarily need to take a different path than the average kid might go through, but that's all okay. You can get there in the end. It certainly took me a longer time to grow up and to figure certain life things out that other people kind of knew instinctively, and then to figure out where I wanted to be and to build what I needed to get there. That took many years, but it'll be okay. It will be okay. Yeah.
I think the thing that I realized was I come from a good family. I got good parents, I got an awesome brother. I came from a good family. So, if you're supportive and, you grow your kids up right, I think that, and you by leading by example as well as a parent, it can definitely have that flow-on effect to your kids, even if you can't see that in your son or daughter at the time. I think that plays a role. I remember, I think a big thing to where I get my, I think a lot of who I am today definitely comes from my parents. And a lot of people would say that my parents are very kind and they'll bend over backwards for anyone to help them. And, I think that's been a really great, I suppose, natural, probably something I inherited from them type of thing. So, I think the biggest thing is it can be very difficult for a kid to know that. Sometimes yelling at your kid to do better probably isn't the best route. But, even I think a big thing now is, I was on a podcast like last year sometimes, and I was asked, when you're in school, did you have a role model? And I didn't have any role models in school. None that no one I could look up to. Like, I didn't have like the local priest or anyone like that who I could talk to or whatever like that. The only people I had were my mates who, probably weren't leading me down the right paths. But, if I was to be connected with maybe people who were like me or had lived the life that I had lived, maybe I would have taken a completely different path, because they may have been able to go, hey, look, you should look at this here. This could help you, or come with us and we could help you with this, When I look back at that now, I think, that could have helped me a lot better, having those mentors and people to look up to, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And I think I would say too to any parents is pursue diagnosis. It really changes everything, the whole course of your life. So if you think your kid has autism, ADHD, is neurodiverse in some way, make sure you get that diagnosis for them. It can be rough, it can take a while, it can cost a bit of money, but it will really change their life for the better. Happened to me at 41, and I really wish it had happened when I was a kid.
Well, I got my ADHD diagnosis at 40, only a few months ago, but it does make a hell of a lot of sense now, like, because back in those days, it now makes sense why I just couldn't focus. It's so different. It's so different. But yeah, definitely. So hopefully that's some cool things here. But to finish it off, what's the positives of our experience, do you think, Kev? Like, I don't think I look back at things, and I think everyone looks back on life and wishes they would have changed certain things. But I think for me that you do look at a lot of things and you think, well, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be doing this, or if this didn't happen, I wouldn't have been doing this. What's some of your thoughts, mate?
I like that I can now gain such a detailed understanding of my brain and how it works, especially being diagnosed. Like, I don't think a lot of people, life doesn't have an instruction manual. Well, mine kind of does, because there's a diagnosis that I can read about and find out about. There's been a lot of study done on people like me, and so that has just been so rewarding and life-changing. But also, I guess, just my weirder abilities to do with work. I can look at a spreadsheet with thousands of lines of data, and I can just see where all the problem places are and how to fix it, to see patterns and things. And musically, I think I'm very proud of the music that I make. It's very different, and I think my brain is the reason for that. I just don't approach those things the same way.
Yeah, totally. Like I said, like, I think the biggest positive that I'm finding now is that with my journey to where I'm at, I've got a pretty kick-ass story to share. Do you know what I mean? I got an awesome story, and it almost makes that what I'm doing that much better, because it's like, so for example, let's say a big corporate reaches out to me. I can say exactly, what's happening here, what's going on here. I know exactly. At first, I was like, oh, gee, man, I really don't know what I'm doing here. And then I was like, hang on, I'm actually the best at this. People look up to me and go, hey, man, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm in meetings and they're like, man, this is the right guy for the job, and it's like, at first I was sort of like, oh, really? But now I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm the right man for the job. So without that experience, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today, right? And look, like you said, with some of the things that you can do that other people can't do, that's definitely plays in with me as well, but in different areas. I may not be as good at looking at spreadsheets and identifying bad areas. I could be, to tell you the truth. I'd have to sit down with you, but for me, even like you and I talk about it when we talk about the Openhearted app. I'm out there grinding, finding new clients, new opportunities, all that. But that stuff just comes naturally to me. A lot of the time, it just happens. Do you know what I mean? And for some people, that's difficult for them to do. Where for me, some of these things come naturally, which is awesome. So definitely some really cool things there. Now, Kev, did you have anything else that you wanted to share before we wind everything up?
Just to thank you to everyone for listening. It's been cool watching things grow. We've had an interesting journey over, 8 episodes now?
Yeah, this is our 8th episode. We've still got a few more to go.
Some very high caliber people wanting to talk with us, which has been great.
Yeah. It's definitely been cool to we're getting a lot of people reaching out to us who are like, man, can I come on to the podcast and this and that? And we're sort of like, to tell you the truth, like the big reason why Kev and I are like doing this one like by ourselves, we're like, man, let's just have a break and let's just talk about something ourselves, so we can try and put some other things into place and just have it a little bit more organized, because it has become a little bit like getting there. But you know what? We're seeing more and more people interacting with the post. That's been fantastic. Please, like I said, join our social media platforms. The more people we can have on them who are interacting, don't just join it and not interact. Interact. We want to hear from people. We want to hear what you're struggling with and all of that. But I think that's what's happening with us. But if anyone else, does anyone else have any other questions that they want to ask? No, unless that is a time delay, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. Kev, it is awesome to hear that grinding stopped. I don't know how I would have been able to get through. Awesome. Thank you so much for the awesome replies. Awesome podcast. Thank you. I really appreciate, we both really appreciate that. But look, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Look, please share this if you can. Please subscribe, follow, and like our social media platforms. My name's Will Wheeler. I'm joined here with my co-host, Photon John, and you're listening to the Openhearted Podcast. Till next time.
Thanks.